Welcome to another week of Miiverse drawings. This week I'm going to talk about pixel art again in sorts, but in the fact that there may be some people that you see that do realistic drawings, or should I say, not necessarily realistic, but it looks like it was pulled straight off the internet and put in Miiverse rather than actually created. A little difficult to explain, but let me actually show you what I mean. Give me a sec here. There's one person, he goes by the name R, and he's really into that. I'm not sure how far, we'll have to go down to... here we go. So let me take a look to show you what I mean. I mean art in terms of this, where it's done pixel by pixel, but it looks like a photo, I guess. He's got some other stuff, I guess, too, but I got to know him through his photorealistic drawings, which I guess is ultimately what this is, photorealistic. Some amazing artwork. I don't want to spoil it all, because he doesn't have a whole lot, but the time it takes, I can understand why. But I'm going to dive into this. I've not done any myself, but my eyesight kind of prevents me from doing that. But I want to talk about how I would go about it, and I imagine how folks like R go about it. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So the first thing you'll need to do is to find an image to tackle. Be it from a game you want to do or whatever, it doesn't matter. It might take a while to get the image or the picture how you want it, but what I did was I took this Wind Waker picture and I shrunk it down a bit because it was pretty large in size, so I shrunk it down a bit, and then I made a new tab in Photoshop and made the size 320 by 120, the size of the gamepad. And what I did was I then pasted the image within that and then framed it how I wanted. So I basically got the image parts that I wanted in it to fit, and then went from there. You can use any image editing software, Photoshop, GIMP, what have you. The main thing that you'll need to be able to do is to zoom into the pixel size. So you'll be able to have to zoom in all the way, or at least far enough in to see the individual pixels. I guess Paint and Windows would do it as well if you've only got that. The next thing is, if your image is in color, it's not going to work, obviously. I've got my image already done, but I'm gonna show you a quick process here and walk through it as I do it, so you have a better idea of what's going on, rather than me just explaining it and showing you the end result. You won't be able to see my tabs, but I'll state them as I go through them, if you're using Photoshop to help you out with that. So obviously in color it's not going to work, because one, we don't have color, and two, I'm sure many of us can't imagine this just being in gray. So what we're going to do is change it first to grayscale. You can do black and white straight up if you want, which might be easier ultimately. But for what I did is I did grayscale. So basically, to change it, you go to Image Adjustments, and you can go to black and white if you prefer to change it to black and white. Or you can go to Mode and then go to grayscale. It's gonna be like the second from the top, so you won't see it within the working space I've got recording, but let's do that now. Do I want to discard it? Yes, there's no reason to use color. So, a nice grayscale picture here. And so this still won't be enough because, you know, if you were to zoom in a lot, let's see, zoom in, you've got different shades of gray, and you know that's going to be a little difficult to deal with. So we are going to do a little something more with it. We're going to add a filter to kind of help us out. So you go to filter, and go to texture, and then you'll go to grain. I found this to be the best one for what I was trying to show. Obviously, when you're in the filter area, there's a lot of different things you can apply. It's up to you what you're going for and all, but grain is really what you'll want if you're trying to get simple, basic to go by. And let's see. So, let's see. What did I use? I used regular grain. Now you won't be able to see it because it's on the right of my recording area, but it states a grain type. There's regular, soft, sprinkles, clumped, blah blah blah. I left it at regular. There's also intensity and contrast. Now for this, I think it normally defaults to like, let's see, 50 and 40. Normally I think it defaults around that. And while that's kind of cool, it still leaves a lot of gray within there to work with. So that might be a bit much. So what I did, and I noticed it saved its information from when I did it last, but what I did was 70 intensity, and then let's see, the contrast was up to 100, which gives you a nice defined shape. It uses black, white, gives you nice defined shapes. Still gives you some black spots in here to give it shading and all. So click OK, and then that'll change into that. Don't save. So the next thing you'll need to do is to actually set up a grid system. The grid system that you set up is up to you. It's time consuming, not so much when you're setting up your image itself. When you're setting up your image, it's not too bad. Basically what I used was rulers, or whatever it's called. I can't remember the name at the moment. The things you pull out from the side from the rulers. And I cordon off sections. Now, I did change, normally my ruler up here is in inches. I changed this to pixels to help me out with this particular setup. Much easier that way. I set mine up in 20s, so 20-20 box. You can set it up 10-10, 5-5, whatever. It's just the smaller the box is, the more boxes you're gonna have to deal with, which can be good or bad. Really depends on what you're going for. The thing is I went with 20 by 20 because remember you're 320 by 120, so you're gonna have to work within the limits that it's even enough that you don't have these odd boxes that aren't full boxes with the rest of them. So 5, 10s, or 20s would probably be easiest. If you have another number like a larger number, then I guess that would work as well. Just try to do it where it's even, where you don't have any non-full boxes. Don't do it where it's 7 by 7 and like at the bottom you have like a 3 by 7 box or something. That's just strange and awkward. So try to do something even and go with that. So with this, it will be a lot of pixel counting. What I did is I set up the boxes so that it would be even. Quick, easy ruler stuff. Get it all set up. Now let's scroll out for a second. 100%. So while we've got this image, we also have to take into consideration our gamepad. This is what I'm going to use as our gamepad. You basically have to go in and create the grid on your gamepad as well, 20 by 20 or whatever it is that you set it up as. Make sure it's the same. Obviously here I'll be able to see if it's the same or not, but make sure it is. Double, triple count if you have to before finalizing it and moving on to actually drawing it, because it can come back to bite you in the rear later. So I've got the grid set up, and then comes the fun part. Let me actually go ahead and tile these since I'm going to be working from this. Okay, so what you'll do is scroll into, you can start wherever. I find it's usually, since we read from left to right, top to bottom, to start in the top left corner. I usually work across in rows as well. Up to you really. So zoom in a bit on the right image so we can see a better idea, be able to count squares and all. And scooch over here and zoom in to this box as well. So we can zoom in closer or we can leave it as is. So basically what you'll do is you'll count. Basically what I would recommend is, if there's a nice starting point in each box, to start in that point. So like here there's a lot of boxes and it starts in the corner. So it might be easier to count from the corner, each box that's black, and then work up and then add all these spots. So ultimately what you'll end up with is square one when you're done. Now you'll have to excuse me on the right because I did this grayscale. I kept a few gray boxes throughout the image. And basically what I did was I either adjusted them to white or black depending on how I felt the area felt within the image itself. So some of the grays may become black, some may become white. So after pixel counting, this is your image. Looks just like this. Screw that up. So it's pixel by pixel. Very time consuming, but again the effects are amazing. Let's go back. So the second box, go to the second box, scoot that over, and when all is said and done, the second box looks like the second box. And you just do this box by box. Go to the third box, go to the third box, and bam. And so you'll scoot over to the next boxes. Actually, this next one I'm gonna do a bunch at once. I've set it up where I show the first few boxes, but then afterwards the remaining boxes for this row will pop up. So let me turn that on, and as you'll see, all the pixel counting here done to match up with what is going on. Now I do want to say that I did do this pixel by pixel. I literally took several hours out of several days and sat and did this pixel by pixel, counting pixels and all. And the reason I do that is so I can see any troubles that you guys might run into, especially since you're going to be working on the gamepad. It's going to be more difficult, more time consuming. But it also gives me an idea of more that goes into it than just talking about it, especially since this isn't one I've done on the gamepad yet. As much as I'd love to attempt this on the Wii U like I've said in past, I think my eyesight would prevent me from doing it, even though the results are wonderful. I don't think it'll allow me to do that. But let me scroll out here for a second. And so, with all the pixel counting and all, you'll see that the top row is starting to shape up, and that all those pixels that you were just adding earlier that didn't mean a thing, now when you look at it, is starting a picture. So you're starting to see some actual something to show from it. Also, while we're doing this, let me go back a second. I'll turn off a few layers here, so you'll have to excuse me. I'll turn them back on momentarily. What you'll see is that this is the line itself is on the 20, which means it's going to eat into it. Basically, I don't touch this line until I'm working in this box. This is the first thing I'll edit to match what's going on here. If it's white, I'll change it to white. It's much easier, I found, that if you leave this for this next box to deal with, and then this for this box, and I don't touch this until I start doing this box, and then here this goes together here, and this goes together here. If you do just one side of a box as you're going along, it's easier to keep up, and if you come back to it later, then it's easier to get back into, because you kind of know where you left off. Say you were going to this box and you're like, well, I gotta take a short break. You didn't touch this. This gives you a great area to start working with again, because then you'll be able to get this white space, change this to the white space, and then as you'll see in the corner, they start with the black. So a lot of it's about being able to maintain where you are in the piece. It can be really difficult, especially when you're doing a lot of pixel counting, and I know it's easy here to say in Photoshop because, well, I've got the pixel counts and I can see the individual pixels. It's even more important that you get some kind of system to help yourself as you're going along to make it easier on yourself. Now, this particular piece that I've got here might be a bit more complicated in terms of time and all for the gamepad, but remember, you don't have to do something this involved. It can be something a lot simpler as well. So we're going to zoom out, and then so we see this is shaping along nicely. So again, you'll look at each box and go along reading the whole thing. So the second row ended up looking like this, which is great because this guy's eyes, his arm, the mast, the front of the boat, the mountain. So as you're going along, you're going to be able to see the picture slowly come out to be what you're doing. The thing is you can be slightly off with some of your pixels. I would make sure that they're not important pixels, like, you know, stuff in the sky is okay. Maybe some of these dots in here might be okay in slightly different areas. But what you'll really need to make sure is that some of your important pieces match up, that they line up. Like, say for this mast, for instance, it's really important that your pixels line up in the, let's take a look here. It's really important that your pixels match up so that they come down and form this mast, instead of, you know, where it comes down too short and then you've got it coming over here. That would look strange. So the main important thing here is to keep in mind that you'll need to match up important pieces. If nothing else, match up the important pieces. I will say that, and this is just in Photoshop, it has been easy, and it has happened quite a bit, losing pixel count. And like I said, it's not so bad in some places, but for important things that need to match up, it can be. So when you're working on the gamepad, try to be particularly careful. Now, it's easy for me to correct the mistakes and all in Photoshop, but it would be a lot more difficult on the gamepad, especially if you've moved on. So every once in a while, get back and look at your image, see how it's progressing. Is there anything that looks strange? Is there anything that might need adjusting now before you move on? Because it's a lot easier to adjust now before you move on. Say like something here is not matching up or something from the previous. It's easier to fiddle with that now than it is to add more stuff and realize maybe you based it on the wrong pixel number or something. So make sure that you're looking at this image from afar time to time, where it makes sense, where you see what it's coming out to be and that it's working for you. So let me go ahead and add the other rows. Row 3, row 4, row 5, and row 6. And so ultimately, after it all said and done, with you editing the boxes and getting all the pixels in the right place, you should come out with a carbon copy of your image, or close enough to a carbon copy from your image. I say if you would like to try this, that you try something simpler first, maybe not something quite so busy, though I could have also changed it where there's a lot less color, I should say. Like the intensity, remove some of these black spots, where it would be a lot more simplistic. So you can go with something that looks complicated, just adjust the effects where it's not too crazy, not going to be too much for you to handle. You can also go with a simpler image at the beginning if that's just going to be easier for you. Try to go simple in the beginning, I would imagine, because one, time, and it all goes back to budgeting your time. So anyway, I would imagine going simple on this would be easier. Something simple, maybe simple is not the right word. You can go with something simple if it's easier for you, but remember, under the filter effects, that you can change the amount of grain, so it would remove some of this extra stuff here, making it more white, which would mean a lot less work, which can make an image that's normally a little bit more complicated simpler. Just remember that there's a lot of time involved. Unfortunately for like me, it's my eyes, but also I share my Wii U with my husband, so there are times I spend on just normal drawings a lot of time, and I like to try not to hog the Wii U. Sometimes that's kind of difficult depending on what I'm drawing, but with this I would imagine it'd take a long time. Now, if they ever offered a system where you could save one image for each account, or I shouldn't say image, I should say one post that you're currently working on, which more than likely would be an image if you need to save it, per account, then that would be amazing. I would choose a piece and I would work on it and go from there. Sadly, that's not the case, so I'm pretty much not doing this unless it's something a lot simpler, but I'll see how it goes. I'm kind of toying with the idea of pulling something simple and trying it, but hopes aren't high for it right now. But the idea is really cool. As you've seen with ours pictures at the beginning, really awesome effect. So, you know, if you really dig it and you really want to put that kind of time in, and it's an image you really, really like, or it's from a favorite scene from a game or a favorite character, then I say go for it, because it really can attract folks, and it's just, you know, quite awesome. You look at that and you're like, wow, someone put a lot of time into that. So it's really up to you. Some people it works for. I think R is really the only person that I've seen got that detailed. There might be another person or two on there, and there is at least one other person I can think of offhand that's done maybe an image like that. of a person's face or something, but it's not multiple pieces like ours done. So this isn't for the faint of heart or the people that want a quick drawing and be done. But this can do a lot for you in terms of practice and I think skills overall. I think you'll also get a nice following as well if that's really all you're concerned about. But for me, I love to see when folks do this stuff because it really turns out nice. This is how I would do it. I can't say for sure that's what R does it or anybody else does it, but this is how I would do it. And I imagine that if they don't do this, they do something similar to it. In case, I hope this has been a help for anyone that's interested in this particular type of art. So, I apologize for the length of this video. I kind of get in depth with it, mainly for the fact that I kind of want to be able to assist people with this, whether they've tried it before or not. I do hope that it's helpful enough to get some folks started into this, because while it's time consuming, it turns out some amazing results, and I'd love to see more folks do it if they have the time. But with that, that's pretty much it. I'm not sure what next week's topic is going to be about, but I'll get to that this weekend. In the meantime, I just wanted to thank you for watching and hope you have a good week, guys.